The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday afternoon, the kind of rain that makes you want to stay home under a warm blanket. But for Linda Martinez, there was no staying home. She had a business to run, even if that business was barely keeping its head above water. Linda's little diner sat on the corner of 5th and Main, sandwiched between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The place wasn't fancy. The sign outside had 2 letters that didn't light up anymore. The booths had duct tape covering the tiers in the vinyl, and the paint on the walls was starting to peel in the corners. But it was clean, the food was honest, and Linda treated every customer like family. She'd inherited the diner from her father 5 years ago. He'd run it for 30 years before that, serving breakfast and lunch to factory workers, taxi drivers, nurses coming off the night shift, and anyone else who needed a hot meal and a friendly face. Her father used to say that a diner wasn't just about food. It was about giving people a place where they felt welcome, where they mattered. Linda tried to honor that philosophy every single day, even though the bills were piling up and the competition from fast food chains was getting tougher. Last month, she'd had to let go of her part-time cook. Now she was doing everything herself, cooking, serving, cleaning, opening at 5 in the morning and closing at 8 at night. It was around 3 in the afternoon when things were finally slowing down. The lunch rush was over, and only 2 regulars remained, nursing their coffee and reading the newspaper. Linda was wiping down the counter, mentally calculating whether she could afford to fix the walk-in cooler that had been making strange noises for the past week. That's when the door opened. An old man stood in the doorway, and Linda could tell right away that he was soaked to the bone. Water dripped from his gray hair onto his shoulders. His coat looked like it had seen better days, probably a decade ago. His pants were too short, showing mismatched socks, and his shoes had holes in them. He carried a small, worn backpack that looked almost empty. Linda watched as the man hesitated by the door, looking around the diner with uncertain eyes. She could see him taking in the warm lights, the smell of coffee and soup, the dry interior. He looked cold and tired and maybe a little lost. The 2 regulars at the counter glanced at the old man, then at each other. One of them shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The other went back to his newspaper, but Linda could tell he was paying attention, watching from the corner of his eye. The old man took a tentative step inside, letting the door close behind him. He stood there, dripping water onto the checkered floor, looking like he wasn't sure if he belonged there or not. Linda put down her rag and walked around the counter. She gave him her warmest smile, the same smile her father had taught her to give everyone who walked through that door. "Hi there," she said. "Come on in and get out of that rain. Sit anywhere you'd like." The old man looked surprised, like he'd expected something different. He glanced around again, then shuffled to a booth near the back, sliding onto the cracked vinyl seat. Linda grabbed a menu and a glass of water and followed him. "Nasty weather out there," she said, setting the water down in front of him. "You must be freezing. Can I get you some coffee to warm you up?" The old man nodded, his hands wrapped around the water glass like he was trying to absorb its coolness. "Yes, please," he said quietly. His voice was raspy, like he hadn't used it much recently. Linda poured him a cup of coffee from the pot she kept fresh all day. She noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he lifted the cup to his lips. When he took that first sip, she saw his shoulders relax just a little bit. "Take your time looking at the menu," she said. "No rush." She went back to the counter but kept an eye on him. He was studying the menu carefully, and she could see his lips moving as he read the prices. After a few minutes, he dug into his coat pocket and pulled out a small handful of crumpled bills and some change. He counted it carefully, his fingers moving slowly through the money. Linda had seen that look before. She knew exactly what he was doing. He was figuring out what he could afford. When she went back over, he looked up at her with those sharp, clear eyes that seemed oddly out of place in his weathered face. "Could I get the soup of the day?" he asked. "Just the soup, please." Linda knew the soup was the cheapest thing on the menu. It was vegetable soup today, made from scratch that morning with carrots, potatoes, celery, and tomatoes. "Sure thing," she said. "The soup comes with bread. Is that okay?" The old man nodded, looking relieved. "Yes, thank you." As Linda went to get his soup, one of the regulars at the counter caught her attention. He was an older guy named Frank who'd been coming to the diner for years. "You sure about this?" Frank asked quietly, nodding toward the old man. "Guy looks like he's been sleeping rough." Linda ladled the soup into a bowl, making sure to give him extra. Everyone needs to eat, Frank, she said simply. Frank shrugged and went back to his coffee, but Linda could tell he disapproved. She brought the soup and a basket of fresh bread to the old man's table. She'd also put a pat of butter in the basket, even though that wasn't standard. There you go, she said. Be careful, it's hot. Thank you, the old man said. And there was something in his voice, a depth of gratitude that seemed bigger than just getting a bowl of soup. Linda went back to her work, but she found herself glancing over at him every so often. He ate slowly, savoring each spoonful like it was the best meal he'd ever had. He spread the butter carefully on the bread, making it last. Nothing was wasted. When Frank and the other regular left, the diner was empty except for Linda and the old man. She was refilling the coffee machine when she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me, miss?" She turned around. The old man was standing there, holding his empty bowl and coffee cup. "Let me take those," Linda said, reaching for the dishes. "I wanted to say thank you," he said. "That was a really good soup." "Best I've had in a long time," Linda smiled. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." "My father's recipe." The old man nodded slowly. "You have a kind place here?" "It feels warm. Not just the temperature, you know what I mean." "I do," Linda said. "That's what my dad always wanted. A place where people felt welcome." They stood there for a moment, and Linda felt an unexpected connection with this stranger. There was something about him, something in his eyes that spoke of intelligence and depth, even though his circumstances looked rough. "Well," he said, reaching into his pocket for his money. "What do I owe you?" Linda thought about the bills waiting in her office, the cooler that needed fixing, the rent that was due next week. She thought about how every dollar mattered when you were barely scraping by. Then she thought about her father and what he would do. "You know what?" she said. "Don't worry about it today. It's on the house." The old man's eyes widened. "I couldn't," he protested, holding out the crumpled bills. "I can pay. I have money." "I'm sure you do," Linda said gently. "But save it for tomorrow. Consider this a gift from one human being to another. Sometimes we all need a little help." For a moment, the old man just stood there looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. His eyes seemed to get a little misty, though that might have been her imagination. "That's very kind of you," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "Very kind indeed." "It's just soup," Linda said with a shrug, though they both knew it was more than that. The old man smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. "Just soup," he repeated. "Right." He started to head toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "I didn't catch your name." "Linda," she said. "Linda Martinez. Nice to meet you." "Linda, I'm Robert." He extended his hand, and when she shook it, she was surprised by how firm his grip was. "Nice to meet you too, Robert." He nodded and walked toward the door, but Linda called out after him, "Wait a second." She hurried to the kitchen and quickly made 2 sandwiches, wrapping them in wax paper. She grabbed a thermos from the shelf, filled it with hot coffee, and brought everything to Robert. "For later," she said, pressing the bundle into his hands. "And Robert, if you're ever in the neighborhood again, you're always welcome here. Anytime." Robert took the food, and this time there was no mistaking the tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have no idea what this means." He squeezed her hand once, gently, then walked out into the rain. Linda watched through the window as he walked down the street, clutching the sandwiches and thermos close to his chest, his figure growing smaller until he disappeared around the corner. She sighed and went back to wiping down tables, her mind already moving to the next task. The encounter had touched her heart, sure, but life went on. She had a diner to run, bills to pay, and problems to solve. She had no idea that everything was about to change. Linda didn't think much about Robert after that rainy Tuesday. She'd served countless people over the years, shown kindness to strangers more times than she could count. That's just who she was. That's how her father had raised her. The next few weeks were tough, though. The walk-in cooler finally gave up completely, and the repair cost nearly wiped out her savings. Then the dishwasher broke down. Linda found herself washing dishes by hand at midnight, her back aching, wondering how long she could keep this up. Her younger brother Tommy stopped by one evening after she'd closed up. He found her sitting in one of the booths, surrounded by bills and receipts, a calculator in front of her and worry written all over her face. "That bad?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Linda rubbed her eyes. "The rent's going up next month. Mrs. Patterson is raising it by $300. Can you afford that?" She didn't answer right away. The truth was, she probably couldn't. Not with everything else falling apart. "I might have to sell," she said quietly. The words hurt to say out loud. "There's a developer who's been asking about the building, wants to tear it down and put up condos." Tommy knew what the diner meant to her. It wasn't just a business. It was their father's legacy, the last piece of him they had left. "Dad would understand," Tommy said gently. "He'd want you to be okay, not to run yourself into the ground." Linda nodded, but tears were running down her face. "I know. I just feel like I'm failing him, you know? He kept this place going for 30 years. I can't even make it 5. "You're not failing anyone," Tommy said firmly. "The world's different now. It's harder for small businesses. You've done everything you could." After Tommy left, Linda sat there in the empty diner for a long time. The place was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. She looked around at the faded pictures on the walls, photos of her father with regular customers over the years, pictures of the diner when it first opened, back when everything looked new and full of promise. She thought about all the people who'd come through that door, the factory worker who'd just lost his job, and she'd fed him for a week until he found something new, the single mom who'd been short on cash, and Linda had let her work off meals by helping clean, the college student who studied in the corner booth for hours and Linda never rushed him even when the place was busy. Her father used to say that you could tell the character of a community by how it treated its most vulnerable members. This diner had always been a place where everyone was treated with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. Could she really let that go? 3 weeks after meeting Robert, Linda was opening up at 5 in the morning when she noticed something unusual. A black car was parked across the street, expensive looking with tinted windows. She'd never seen it in the neighborhood before. She didn't think much of it and went about her morning routine. By 6, she had coffee brewing and was prepping for breakfast. A few early bird regulars trickled in, nurses from the hospital down the street, a taxi driver named Pete who always ordered the same thing. Around 7:30, a woman in a business suit walked in. She looked out of place in the diner, too polished, too professional. Her heels clicked on the linoleum floor as she approached the counter. "Linda Martinez?" she asked. Linda felt a flutter of nervousness. People in suits usually meant trouble. The health inspector? The tax office? A lawyer for Mrs. Patterson with the eviction notice? "That's me," Linda said, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman extended her hand. "My name is Patricia Wong. I'm a private investigator. Could we talk for a few minutes?" A private investigator? Linda's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. "Am I in some kind of trouble?" she asked. Patricia smiled. "No, nothing like that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Could we sit?" They settled into a booth and Patricia pulled out a small notepad. "I'm going to ask you some questions that might seem strange," Patricia said, "but I need you to answer them honestly. About 3 weeks ago, did an elderly man come into your diner? Probably looked homeless, wore an old coat?" Linda's heart skipped. "Robert, is he okay? Did something happen to him?" Patricia's expression softened. "You remember him?" "Of course I remember him. He was soaking wet from the rain. I gave him soup and coffee." Linda leaned forward, concerned. "Please, is he all right?" "What else do you remember about that day?" Linda described the encounter, how Robert had seemed uncertain about coming inside, how he'd carefully counted his money, how she'd given him the meal for free and sent him off with sandwiches and coffee. Patricia was writing everything down, nodding occasionally. "Why didn't you charge him?" Patricia asked. Linda shrugged. "He needed help. That's what we do here. My father always said a meal can change someone's day, maybe even their life. It was just soup. It didn't cost me much. But you were struggling financially yourself, weren't you?" Linda felt defensive suddenly. "How do you know that?" "I'm an investigator. It's my job to know things." Patricia's voice was kind, not accusatory. "You were behind on bills. The equipment was breaking down. You'd had to let your staff go. Yet you still gave away a free meal." "So what?" Linda said. Lots of people have it worse than me. Just because I'm having a hard time doesn't mean I can't help someone else." Patricia smiled and closed her notepad. "Ms. Martinez, did Robert tell you his last name?" "No, just Robert. His full name is Robert Westfield. Does that mean anything to you?" Linda shook her head. "Should it?" Patricia pulled out her phone and showed Linda a picture. It was a professional photo, the kind you'd see in a business magazine. The man in the photo was clean-shaven, wearing an expensive suit, looking confident and successful. But the eyes were familiar. "That's Robert?" Linda said, shocked. "But he looked so different. What is he, some kind of millionaire?" "Billionaire, actually," Patricia said. "Robert Westfield made his fortune in manufacturing and real estate. He's one of the wealthiest men in the state." Linda felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. But why was he dressed like that? Why did he come into my diner looking homeless? Patricia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Can I tell you something in confidence?" Linda nodded, still reeling from the revelation. Robert's wife died 2 years ago. They'd been married for 53 years. After she passed, he became disillusioned with his life, with the people around him. He felt like everyone wanted something from him, that no one saw him as a person anymore, just as a source of money. Patricia paused, choosing her words carefully. He started doing this thing where he'd disguise himself and visit different businesses around the city. He wanted to see how people treated someone who appeared to have nothing. Most places, he was ignored or turned away. Some people were openly hostile. He was testing humanity in a way, trying to find proof that good people still existed. Linda thought about that day, about how easy it would have been to turn Robert away, to be too busy, to not care. "He came here about 4 weeks ago," Patricia continued. "And you treated him with kindness and generosity, even though you were struggling yourself. You didn't just serve him a meal. You talked to him, treated him with dignity, sent him off with extra food." "It wasn't anything special," Linda protested. "Any decent person would have done the same." Patricia shook her head. "You'd be surprised how few people did. Out of 37 businesses Robert visited over 6 months, yours was one of only 3 where someone showed him genuine kindness. And you were the only one who gave him food without asking for payment and then sent him away with more." Linda didn't know what to say. She thought about all the times her father had told her that character is what you do when no one is watching. How you treat people when they can't do anything for you. "Why are you telling me this?" Linda asked. Patricia's expression became more serious. "Because Robert wanted you to know. He wanted you to understand why he made the decision he made." "What decision?" Patricia pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. It was from a prestigious law firm downtown, with an address in the financial district. "Mr. Harrison, the attorney listed here, needs to speak with you. It's urgent. Robert specifically requested that you come to the office as soon as possible." "I don't understand," Linda said, staring at the card. "What does he want from me?" "I can't tell you that. I was just asked to find you and deliver the message. But Ms. Martinez, I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I can tell you that Mr. Westfield is a good man. Whatever this is about, it's not bad news." Patricia stood up to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Robert asked me to tell you something. He said to tell you that your father would be proud of you. He said you honored your father's memory every day." After Patricia left, Linda sat in the booth for a long time, turning the business card over in her hands. Pete, the taxi driver, called out asking for a refill, and she jumped, having forgotten anyone else was there. She poured his coffee on autopilot, her mind spinning with questions. Why would a billionaire want to meet with her? What could he possibly want? And how did he know about her father? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Linda burned a batch of pancakes, something she never did. She mixed up orders and forgot to charge one customer entirely. Her mind was somewhere else, trying to make sense of what Patricia had told her. That evening, after closing, she called Tommy. "You're not going to believe what happened today," she said, and told him everything. Tommy was quiet for a long moment after she finished. "So are you going to go?" he asked finally. "I don't know. What if it's some kind of scam?" Linda, the woman, was a real private investigator. That was a real law firm on the card. I just looked them up. They're legitimate, top tier. But why would a billionaire want to meet with me? There's only one way to find out, Tommy said. Go to the meeting. That night, Linda lay in bed unable to sleep. She kept thinking about Robert, about that rainy afternoon, about the conversation they'd had. She remembered how he'd said the diner felt warm and she'd known exactly what he meant. She thought about her father and all the lessons he'd taught her. Be kind, treat people with dignity. Remember that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. She'd just been being herself that day. She hadn't known Robert was anyone special. She'd just seen a cold, wet, hungry person who needed help. Isn't that what anyone would do? But apparently it wasn't. Apparently, out of nearly 40 businesses, only 3 people had shown Robert basic human kindness. That thought made Linda sad for the world. The law office was in the tallest building downtown, the kind of place Linda had walked past 100 times but never imagined going inside. The lobby had marble floors so shiny she could see her reflection, and a security desk where she had to show ID and explain her business. Linda Martinez, she told the guard, her voice sounding small in the vast space. I have an appointment with Mr. Harrison. The guard checked his computer, made a phone call, and handed her a visitor badge. 32nd floor. The elevator is to your left. Linda had dressed in her best clothes, a simple navy dress she usually saved for church, but she still felt out of place. Other people in the elevator wore designer suits and carried expensive briefcases. They all looked like they belonged there. Linda clutched her worn purse and tried to ignore the way her heart was racing. When she stepped out on the 32nd floor, she was greeted by a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect everything. Ms. Martinez, Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Please follow me. They walked down a hallway lined with dark wood paneling and oil paintings that probably cost more than Linda's entire diner. The receptionist led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Please have a seat. Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly. Can I get you some water, coffee? Water would be nice, thank you, Linda said, settling into a leather chair that was more comfortable than her bed at home. Left alone, Linda looked around the room. Everything screamed money and power. The table was massive, polished to a mirror shine. The chairs probably cost more than her monthly rent. Through the windows, she could see the city spread out below, including her neighborhood far in the distance. A cluster of smaller buildings dwarfed by the skyscrapers downtown. The door opened and a man walked in. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and a kind face that put Linda slightly at ease. He carried a leather folder and wore a suit that probably cost more than her car. Ms. Martinez, thank you so much for coming. I'm Richard Harrison. He shook her hand warmly and sat down across from her. I apologize for the mysterious invitation. I'm sure this must all seem very strange. You could say that, Linda said with a nervous laugh. A private investigator showed up at my diner asking questions about a customer. Then I find out he's a billionaire. It's been a confusing couple of days, Mr. Harrison smiled. I can only imagine. Let me start by asking you, do you remember meeting a man named Robert about a month ago? An elderly gentleman who came into your diner on a rainy day? Yes, of course. The investigator asked me about him too. Can you tell me about that encounter? In your own words? So Linda told the story again. The rainy afternoon, Robert standing in the doorway looking uncertain, how she'd welcomed him in, served him soup and coffee, refused his payment, and sent him off with extra food. Mr. Harrison listened intently, occasionally nodding but not interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, his hands folded on the table. Ms. Martinez, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. Robert Westfield passed away 2 weeks ago. Linda felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. What, but he seemed fine. I mean, he was older, but he didn't seem sick. He had a heart condition he'd been managing for years. It was sudden. He didn't suffer. Mr. Harrison's voice was gentle. But before he passed, he made some decisions. Decisions that involve you. Linda's mind was reeling. She'd only met Robert once, for maybe an hour total. Why would his death involve her? Mr. Harrison opened the leather folder and pulled out several documents. Robert was a unique man. After his wife died, he became somewhat reclusive. He started questioning everything about his life, about the people around him, about the world in general. The investigator mentioned something about that, Linda said, about him testing people. Yes, Robert was looking for something he felt the world was losing. Genuine human kindness. Compassion without expectation of reward. He visited dozens of businesses over several months, always disguised as someone down on their luck. Mr. Harrison slid a document across the table toward Linda. What he found disappointed him greatly. Most people ignored him. Some were openly hostile. Security guards escorted him out of establishments. People moved away from him on public transport. A few people were polite but kept their distance. Linda thought about how easy it would have been to be one of those people. She'd been having a bad day. Money was tight. She could have been short with Robert, could have asked him to leave, could have given him the minimum. Then he came to your diner, Mr. Harrison continued, and you treated him with warmth and generosity. More than that, you treated him with dignity. You sat with him. You talked to him like he was a person, not a problem to be solved or avoided. I was just being decent, Linda said. Anyone would have done the same. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Harrison said firmly. Most people didn't. Out of 37 businesses he visited, only 3 showed him kindness. And yours was the only place where someone gave without being asked, where someone went above and beyond. He pulled out another document, and Linda could see it was some kind of report. Pages of typed notes. After meeting you, Robert had you investigated. Please don't be offended, it's what wealthy people do. He wanted to know more about you, about your life, about the diner. Linda felt a mix of emotions. Part of her was uncomfortable knowing someone had been digging into her life. But another part was curious about what he'd found. He learned about your father, Mr. Harrison said, about how he ran the diner for 30 years, about his philosophy of treating everyone with respect. He learned about how you took over after your father passed, about how you've struggled to keep it going. He learned about the times you've helped people in your community, the meals you've given away, the kindness you've shown. I still don't understand why this matters, Linda said, though a small part of her was starting to suspect something that seemed too impossible to believe. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document, this one looking more official, with signatures and seals. Robert was moved by your kindness. He told me that meeting you restored something he thought he'd lost, faith in humanity. He said you represented everything he believed the world should be but feared it wasn't anymore. Mr. Harrison pushed the document toward Linda. 3 days after visiting your diner, Robert came to this office and had me draw up a modification to his will. He was very specific about what he wanted. Linda's hands were shaking as she picked up the document. The legal language was hard to understand, full of words like hereinafter and aforementioned. But then she saw her name, and she saw a number that made her head spin. $5 million. This can't be real, she whispered. This is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, Mr. Harrison said gently. Robert Westfield has left you $5 million. It's real, it's legal, and it's yours. Linda felt like she couldn't breathe. $5 million. She couldn't even imagine that much money. She thought about her struggle to pay the $300 rent increase, about the $1,200 cooler repair that had stressed her out for weeks. But why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I only met him once. I gave him soup. That's all. Just soup. Mr. Harrison reached into the folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. The paper was expensive, cream-colored, and the handwriting was elegant but shaky in places. Robert left this for you. He wanted you to read it yourself, to understand his reasoning. Would you like me to leave you alone for a few minutes? Linda nodded, not trusting her voice. Mr. Harrison quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. With trembling hands, Linda unfolded the letter. Dear Linda, it began. If you're reading this, then I've passed on, and Mr. Harrison has told you about my gift to you. I imagine you're confused, perhaps overwhelmed. Let me try to explain. After my wife Helen died, I lost faith in people. Everyone around me seemed to want something. Business associates wanted deals. Relatives wanted inheritance. Charitable organizations wanted donations. Everyone had an angle, a reason for being nice to me that had nothing to do with who I was as a person. So I decided to conduct an experiment. I wanted to see how people treated someone who appeared to have nothing, someone who couldn't do anything for them. I wanted to find out if genuine kindness still existed in the world. For 6 months, I visited businesses across the city. I was ignored, avoided, and sometimes treated with outright cruelty. I began to think I was right, that the world had lost its compassion. Then I walked into your diner on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. You didn't just serve me food. You welcomed me. You made me feel human again. You sat with me and talked to me like I mattered. You gave without being asked, and you gave more than was necessary. When I tried to pay, you refused. You told me that sometimes people need help, and that your father taught you kindness costs nothing. After I left, I sat in my car for 20 minutes and cried. They were the first tears I'd shed since Helen died. You gave me something more valuable than any meal. You gave me hope. I had you investigated, not to invade your privacy, but because I wanted to know if your kindness was genuine or an act. What I learned humbled me. You've struggled financially for years, yet you still help others. You've given away countless meals to people who couldn't pay. You've treated everyone who walks through your door with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or what they can afford. You honor your father's legacy every single day. You are living proof that good people still exist in this world. I'm giving you this money not as a reward, but as an investment in goodness. Use it however you wish. Fix your diner. Pay off your debts. Live comfortably. Help others the way you helped me. I trust you to do what's right, because that's who you are. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for the soup, for the coffee, for the sandwiches, but most of all, thank you for treating a stranger with kindness when you had no reason to, when you gained nothing from it, when you were struggling yourself. You restored my faith in humanity. That's worth more than $5 million could ever be. With deepest gratitude and respect, Robert Westfield. By the time Linda finished reading, tears were streaming down her face. She read the letter again, then a third time, trying to make sense of it all. A knock on the door made her look up. Mr. Harrison came back in, saw her tears, and quietly handed her a box of tissues. I know this is overwhelming, he said. Take all the time you need. I don't know what to say, Linda managed. This is too much. I can't accept this. You can and you will, Mr. Harrison said firmly but kindly. Robert was very clear about his wishes. He wanted you to have this. Refusing it would dishonor his memory. Linda wiped her eyes and looked at the lawyer. What happens now? Now we begin the process of transferring the funds to you. There will be paperwork, tax considerations, things we need to handle. But the money is yours. It will take a few weeks to finalize everything, but I can assure you this is legitimate and legal. Linda's mind was spinning with possibilities, and questions and emotions she couldn't even name. Linda walked out of that office building feeling like she was in a dream. The city looked the same. People rushed past on their way to wherever they were going. Cars honked in traffic. The sun was shining just like it had been when she walked in. But everything felt different. She felt different. $5 million. She kept saying it in her head, trying to make it feel real. $5 million because she'd given an old man a bowl of soup. When she got back to the diner, it was past lunchtime. She'd left a sign on the door saying she'd be back soon, and she could see a few people peering through the window, disappointed to find it closed. She unlocked the door, flipped the sign to open, and stood there for a moment just looking at the place. The cracked vinyl booths, the flickering light above the counter, the old pictures of her father on the walls, the menu board with the hand-painted letters, some of them fading now. This place had been her whole world for 5 years. Every morning at 5, every evening at 8. The constant worry about bills, about repairs, about whether she could keep going another month. And now, everything had changed. Tommy called her that evening, right as she was closing up. So? He asked. What happened? You've had me on edge all day, Linda had to tell him. She couldn't keep this to herself. She told him everything, the law office, the meeting, Robert's letter, the $5 million. Tommy was silent for so long that Linda thought the call had dropped. Tommy, you still there? $5 million, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. Linda, do you know what this means? You never have to worry about money again. You can pay off every debt, fix everything that's broken, hire staff, expand the diner. You could buy the whole building. I know, Linda said, but her voice didn't sound as excited as Tommy's. She felt overwhelmed, almost frightened by the magnitude of it. What's wrong? Tommy asked, hearing the uncertainty in her voice. This is amazing news. Why don't you sound happy? I am happy, I think. It's just, Tommy, I don't know if I deserve this. All I did was give someone a free meal. People do that every day, why me? Because you did it when you couldn't afford to, Tommy said. Because you didn't know who he was. Because you were kind just for the sake of being kind. That's why. That night, Linda lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She thought about all the possibilities. She could fix the diner, make it beautiful again like it was in her father's time. She could hire staff, take a day off for the first time in years. She could help other struggling business owners in her neighborhood. She could set up a fund to help people who couldn't afford meals, but she also felt a strange pressure. Robert had trusted her with this money. He'd said it was an investment in goodness. What if she didn't live up to that? What if she made the wrong choices? What if she let him down? The news broke 3 days later. Someone at the law firm must have leaked it, because suddenly Linda's phone wouldn't stop ringing. A local reporter showed up at the diner first thing in the morning. "Ms. Martinez, is it true that you inherited millions from Robert Westfield?" Linda didn't know what to say. She hadn't expected this to become public. I can't really comment on that," she stammered. But the reporter had already gotten the confirmation she needed just from Linda's reaction. By noon, news vans were parked outside the diner. By evening, the story was on every local channel. Waitress inherits fortune after act of kindness. Billionaire leaves millions to stranger. Who fed him? Simple meal leads to extraordinary gift, the story went viral. Within days, it was national news. Within a week, international news outlets were picking it up. Linda's phone rang constantly with interview requests. People wanting to tell her story. Producers wanting to make documentaries or movies about her. The attention was overwhelming. People showed up at the diner just to see her, to take pictures with her, to ask her questions. Some people were genuinely kind and happy for her. Others were skeptical, asking what she'd really done to earn the money, implying there must be more to the story. And then there were the people asking for money. Letters arrived every day, hundreds of them, from people with sick relatives, people about to lose their homes, people with business ideas, people who claimed to be long-lost relatives. Everyone had a story. Everyone needed help. Everyone wanted a piece of the fortune. Linda read as many letters as she could at first, her heart breaking with each one. So many people were struggling. How could she say no? How could she choose who to help and who to turn away? One evening, about 2 weeks after the news broke, a woman came into the diner just before closing. Linda was exhausted, wrung out from the constant attention, the endless requests, the weight of decisions she didn't know how to make. The woman was maybe 40, dressed simply, and she had the kind of tired eyes that Linda recognized. "Life hadn't been easy for her. Are you Linda?" she asked. "Yes," Linda said, bracing herself for another request for money. "I'm not here to ask you for anything," the woman said quickly, as if reading Linda's thoughts. "I just wanted to tell you something. My name is Karen and I work at the hospital, on the night shift. I'm a nurse." Linda relaxed a little. "Would you like to sit down? Can I get you some coffee?" They sat in a booth and Linda poured them both coffee. "I've been coming to this diner for 3 years, Karen said. Always after my shift, around 7 in the morning. You've served me probably hundreds of times." Linda studied her face, trying to remember. She served so many people, and after a while the faces blurred together. "About 8 months ago," Karen continued, "I was going through a really rough time. My ex-husband wasn't paying child support. My car broke down. And I was so broke I was choosing between gas and groceries. I came in here one morning and I ordered just coffee because that's all I could afford." Linda listened, a memory starting to form. "You brought me coffee and a full breakfast. I told you I only ordered coffee, but you said you'd made too many pancakes and they'd just go to waste if someone didn't eat them. You wouldn't let me pay for anything except the coffee." Linda remembered now. She remembered Karen's hollow eyes, the way her uniform hung a little loose like she'd lost weight, the almost desperate way she'd drunk that coffee. "I knew you were lying about making too much food," Karen said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you gave me a way to accept help without feeling like I was taking charity. You let me keep my dignity. I came back the next week, same thing. You kept feeding me until I got back on my feet." Tears were running down Karen's face now. "I wanted you to know that what you did mattered. You weren't just kind to that billionaire. You've been kind to people like me. People who nobody makes movies about, people who won't make you famous. You do it because that's who you are." Linda felt tears in her own eyes. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do," Karen said firmly. "Because all this attention you're getting, all these people asking you for money, all the pressure, I know it must be hard. I wanted you to know that the kindness you showed me, and the kindness you showed Mr. Westfield, it wasn't special or different. You're the same person to everyone. That's why you deserve this gift." After Karen left, Linda sat alone in the diner for a long time. She thought about what Robert had written in his letter, about being an investment in goodness. She thought about all the people asking her for money, and she realized something important. She couldn't help everyone. She couldn't solve every problem or answer every request. If she tried, she'd burn herself out and the money would be gone before she knew it. But she could be strategic. She could be thoughtful. She could honor Robert's gift by using it in ways that would help the most people. The next day she called Mr. Harrison. "I want to set up a foundation," she told him. "Something that will last beyond just handing out money. Something that will help people the way my father and I have tried to help people." Mr. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then she heard the smile in his voice. "I think Robert would be very pleased with that decision. Tell me what you're thinking." Over the next few weeks, Linda worked with lawyers and financial advisors to set up the Westfield Martinez Foundation. She put $3 million into it, keeping $2 million for herself to fix up the diner, pay off debts, and provide financial security for her future. The foundation had three main purposes. First, it would provide meals and support services for homeless and food-insecure people in the community. Second, it would offer small grants to struggling small businesses, especially family-owned restaurants and diners like hers. Third, it would provide scholarships for young people going into service industries, hospitality, social work, nursing, teaching, jobs where caring for others was the focus. Linda also made a decision about the diner. She did fix it up, replacing the old equipment, repainting the walls, reupholstering the booths. But she kept it small, kept it simple. She didn't want it to lose the character that made it special. And she kept doing what she'd always done. She still opened at 5 in the morning. She still greeted every customer with a smile. She still gave free meals to people who needed them, though now she didn't have to stress about the cost. One thing did change, though. She put up a small plaque near the entrance. It was simple, just a quote from Robert's letter. "Kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable." The media attention gradually died down. The reporters moved on to other stories. The crowds of curious people stopped coming. Life returned to something like normal, though Linda knew nothing would ever be quite the same. About 6 months after receiving the inheritance, Linda was working the morning shift when an older woman came in. She looked elegant but not flashy, dressed in simple but expensive clothes. She sat at the counter and ordered coffee. "You're Linda Martinez," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am," Linda said, bringing her the coffee. "I'm Helen's sister, Robert's late wife." Linda's hand shook slightly as she set down the coffee cup. "Oh, I wanted to meet you," the woman said. "To see the person who meant so much to my brother-in-law in his final weeks." They talked for over an hour. Helen's sister, whose name was Dorothy, told Linda about Robert and Helen's marriage, about how devoted they'd been to each other, about how lost Robert had been after Helen died. "He was looking for a reason to believe in people again," Dorothy said. "You gave him that. The last time I saw him, about a week before he died, he told me about meeting you. He said you reminded him of Helen, of the kind of person she'd been. That was the highest compliment he could give." Dorothy reached across the counter and squeezed Linda's hand. "Thank you for being kind to him. Thank you for seeing the person, not the disguise. Thank you for giving him hope in his final days." After Dorothy left, Linda stood at the counter for a long time, thinking about Robert, about Helen, about the strange and wonderful way life works sometimes. 2 years after that rainy Tuesday afternoon, Linda stood in front of a crowd of about 50 people at the community center. It was the second anniversary of the Westfield Martinez Foundation, and they were celebrating what they'd accomplished. The foundation had served over 30,000 meals to people experiencing homelessness or food insecurity. They'd given grants to 15 small businesses, helping them upgrade equipment, make repairs, or expand their operations. They'd awarded 43 scholarships to young people pursuing careers in service fields. But more than the numbers, what mattered to Linda were the stories. The single dad who'd received a grant to fix his food truck and now employed 3 other people. The teenager who got a scholarship and was now studying social work. The homeless veteran who'd come to one of their meal programs and, with support from the foundation's partners, now had housing and a job. As Linda spoke to the crowd, she saw faces she recognized. Tommy was there, proud and supportive as always. Karen, the nurse who'd come to thank her, now volunteered at the foundation's meal programs. Patricia Wong, the private investigator who'd first found her, was on the foundation's board of directors. Mr. Harrison, the attorney, had helped set everything up and continued to provide legal guidance, and in the corner, Linda had set up a small memorial. It was a picture of Robert Westfield, not the professional photo from business magazines, but a candid shot Dorothy had given her. In it, Robert and Helen were young, maybe in their 30s, laughing at something outside the camera's frame. They looked happy and in love and full of hope for the future. Next to the picture was Robert's handwritten letter to Linda, framed and protected. People often stopped to read it, and Linda saw more than one person wipe away tears after doing so. After the ceremony, people mingled, eating food catered by local restaurants the foundation had helped. Linda found herself standing by the memorial, looking at Robert's picture. He'd be proud of you. You know, Linda turned to find Dorothy standing beside her, also looking at the picture. I hope so, Linda said. Some days I worry I'm not doing enough. Dorothy smiled. That's exactly why you're the right person for this. Someone who thinks they're doing enough probably isn't. Someone who constantly wonders if they could do more. That's someone who keeps pushing forward. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. Can I tell you something? Dorothy said. When Robert's will was read and we learned about his gift to you, some family members were upset. They thought he should have left all the money to relatives. They questioned his judgment, said he must have been confused or manipulated. Linda felt a familiar pang of guilt. I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause family problems. Don't be sorry, Dorothy said firmly. Those family members hadn't bothered to visit Robert in months. They only cared about his money, not about him. But you cared about a stranger for no reason except that he was a human being who needed help. That's why you got the money and they didn't. She turned to face Linda directly. Robert was the smartest man I ever knew. He made brilliant business decisions for 50 years. Giving you that money was one of his best decisions. Look at what you've done with it. You've helped hundreds of people. You've kept his memory alive in a meaningful way. You've proven that his faith in humanity wasn't misplaced. After the event ended and everyone had left, Linda went back to the diner. It was late evening and the place was closed, but she liked to go there sometimes just to think. The diner looked beautiful now. The equipment was new and worked properly. The booths were repaired and comfortable. The paint was fresh, but Linda had been careful to keep the important things the same. Her father's picture still hung on the walls. The layout was unchanged. The menu still featured his recipes. The spirit of the place remained. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat in her favorite booth, the same one where Robert had sat that rainy afternoon. She thought about how much had changed in 2 years, and yet how much had stayed the same. She still opened at 5 in the morning most days. She still greeted every customer with a smile. She still gave free meals to people who needed them. The difference now was that she didn't have to stress about the cost. She could be generous without fear. Linda pulled out her phone and scrolled through messages. There were dozens, as there were every day. Interview requests, speaking invitations, people asking for advice or help or money. It was still overwhelming sometimes, but she'd learned to manage it better. One message caught her attention. It was from a young woman named Anna, who'd received one of the foundation's scholarships. She'd just graduated from nursing school and wanted Linda to know that she'd gotten her first job at the same hospital where Karen worked. I'm going to be the kind of nurse who sees people, not just patients, Anna had written. The kind of nurse who treats everyone with dignity. Because that's what you taught me. Linda smiled and typed back a congratulations. Then she noticed another message, this one from someone she didn't know. Against her better judgment, she opened it.